Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. It is a beautiful May 4th afternoon, and we have kind of a different stream today. I finally figured out what I want to start talking about when it comes to politics. And, sorry, just make sure the stream's working. Yep, I finally figured out what I want to start talking about when it comes to politics, and I think I'm going to actually start doing it in the next couple of days. However, I'm still quite trepidatious about getting into the political commentary business, and so I have this new video that we can react to. Wrong? There we go. Sorry. Yeah, I found this guy this morning, and he seems super, super interesting. I watched 3 of his videos in the British Constitution. I thought about reacting to them, but they seemed a little bit esoteric to to really make content out of. Very, very informative, though. I think I'll definitely be talking about them later in my other forms of my work. But anyway, I am someone who loves grand theories. Um, Liberalism, Marxism, they're both total grand theories that use simple principles to explain complex problems, and I like hearing about them. And this guy, clearly, I only watched 2 minutes of this video. I watched the first chapter pretty much before I decided that this would be good React content. And so we're going to be getting into it today. The name of the video, if you can't see because of the face cam, is The Housing Crisis is the Everything Crisis. And the YouTuber we are watching today is named Britmonkey. He has 150,000 subscribers, which is pretty small for a YouTube channel discovery these days. Let's see what he's made out of, I guess. Oh, also, I hope you're having a great day.
Every year since 1947, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, a non-profit academic journal concerning science and global security, has published updates on a metaphorical clock counting down to the end of the world. The closer to midnight the clock hands are set, the closer we are to doomsday. Right now, the clock is set at 100 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been.
Jeez Louise.
Some dismiss the bulletin and its clock as fear-mongering, while others see it as a legitimate expression of the scientific community's angst about the future.
I tend to fall into the former category, for the record. It seems that I can't think of a single time in history that the clock has ever gone down, and it definitely. Okay, what would be the argument for the clock staying where it is at the end of the Cold War, like after the collapse of the Soviet Union? Like, Ukraine has nuclear weapons, some post-Soviet states have nuclear weapons, but definitely should have moved it down back then. They only get more alarmist. However, yeah, they only get more alarmist. It's a pretty good argument against the doomsday clock, but it's a good thing to keep around, and it was definitely a good idea at the time.
But whatever you think about it, it's clear the 2020s have been a turbulent decade so far, and the future course of humanity rests on the decisions we'll make over the next few years. It is very likely that current trends continue. Global temperatures inch closer to 2 degrees Celsius. Millions in the developing world are displaced by drought and food shortages. Citizens in the West continue to work unfilling, dead-end jobs for poverty wages, while idiot populists keep getting elected, abusing our
Doug Ford!
and changing nothing.
Okay, putting Doug Ford. Oh, sorry about that. I drank some water earlier. Putting Doug Ford next to what's his name? Something It's J something Bolsonaro. Marine Le Pen, Bojo. I don't mind that. Narendra Modi, and what's his name? Rodrigo Duterte. I think so. The Philippines. Doug Ford's not that bad. Also, he's not really skilled enough politically for me to consider him a populist along with these people. Donald Trump is much more skilled politically than Doug Ford.
Between the haves and the have-nots only gets bigger. All the while, repressive dictatorships with no regard for human rights reorientate the global order in their favor and destabilize the democratic nations of the world. But there is also a possibility that this doesn't happen. Maybe we get our act together and start taking climate change seriously. We care for the poor, we fix our infrastructure, we revive communities, plan for the future and build healthy alliances. Genuine political reform rips out the rot our institutions have been subject to over the past few decades, and our nations are put in the best possible position to challenge the unfree world. then we can finally focus our efforts towards things like going into space, mathematics, quantum mechanics, the secrets of the universe, painting, poetry, music, architecture,
Let's do
the
it.
things that make life worth living. What if I told you that the difference between these two futures is one policy choice so simple, so mind-bogglingly easy, it is sheer elegance in its simplicity. It's called
Building more goddamn houses!
You see what I'm talking about, though? With this grand theory thing? How could you not? How could you not be interested?
across the Western world, house
Also,
prices
look at
and
Canada.
rents are soaring
Whoa!
above what is remotely
What is that?
reasonable.
Percentage? 250% from 2000? Doesn't really say what the y-axis is. But geez, Louis, that looks like a percentage. Ooh. Oh, for a second there, I thought the house prices in Germany had gone down. But no, they've just been less than 100%. Also, Ireland? What happened? What happened? I guess 2008 hit Ireland super hard. Jeez.
Caused by a steep drop in house building since the Great Recession. And this, my dear friends,
Makes sense.
is why everything is so bad these days. Let me explain. Based on the evidence I will present in this video, we can
Boy, oh
pinpoint
boy.
the root cause of most of society's problems right now
I love
down
citations.
to houses being so expensive. For example, in 2015, two professors at Chicago University calculated that if the housing crisis had not happened, the United States economy would be this much bigger. That's prosperity being stolen
Whoa. That seems really a large overestimation.
from you,
That seems really high.
buddy. It is estimated that the housing crisis is the single
Really?
worst thing to ever happen to the economy of England since World War II. Wait, no, sorry. World War What? Oh, the War of the Spanish Succession? The Civil War. No? Oh no. Oh no. The Black Death? Are you kidding me? Houses are the backbone of the free world. Solve the housing crisis and you solve all the other problems. To do that, we need to build more of them.
Okay,
I
let's hear
don't
it.
even care who does it. Private companies, the government, building societies, whatever, it is imperative. Because while Western governments argue for months about if we can take 1 meter
Hey, he
off a
took
historic
Hungary
Western governments
and who's down there? Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm blanking on this. It's not Serbia. Is it Serbia? No, I think Serbia is right here. Hungary. Who's in there?
argue for months
Who's
about if
Hungary's
we can
southern
take
neighbor?
1
Ah,
meter
crap.
off a historically significant car park. China has no problem building 5 new cities, 17,000 more miles of highway, and probably beginning work on a space elevator. No wonder they're calling this the start of the Chinese
Oh, good luck
century.
with that.
We are artificially making ourselves poorer, unproductive, unsustainable, and uncompetitive, and it's entirely down to housing. Here is how fixing the housing crisis will solve nearly all of our problems, including, but not limited to, climate change,
You just
poverty,
said all this, man.
inequality, poor public health, economic stagnation, crime, the cost of living, and more.
Okay, here we go. The actual introduction now.
In the immediate post-war era in the West, housing was a consumer good, like your microwave or your toaster, and it worked like any other consumer good in a capitalist economy. You produce as much as possible for the lowest cost to the consumer. And that's why the UK government also built houses, to compete with private businesses, playing along to keep supply high and prices low. But after the government stopped building houses in the 1980s,
Ooh.
houses have become more of an investment, like fine art or stocks on the stock market, because
Nah, housing is a commodity still.
new
It's
houses
both. Come on, man. This isn't a very good analysis so far.
are now rarer and increase in value over time, just like paintings. So, like bids in an art auction, the price of houses and flats
It's a
can
little more complicated than that.
only go up, taking up more and more of someone's income as the population grows, but the number of houses doesn't keep up.
That's true.
How many people are in poverty right now who would be fine if they simply had cheaper rent or mortgages?
Lots of people.
Wait, we actually have an answer to that one.
Yeah.
About half of all children and 1/4 of all adults in poverty, according to Child Poverty Action Group. Isn't it strange how housing costs were basically not a factor in child poverty until 1980?
Ooh.
I wonder what happened. When house building was at its post-war peak, over 500 houses were completed every day in England, with the record being 1968.
Seems very
where
low,
nearly
actually.
1,000 houses were completed every day. This also coincided with the so-called golden age of capitalism, where everyone could afford a home, a car, 3 kids and a holiday, all on the income of one guy who works in a mine shaft. In the 1950s,
Those poor miners.
the average British man was spending more per week at his local pub than he was on his rent or his mortgage. Here's some concrete proof from Tokyo. In 2015, they approved more housing construction permits than the entirety of England. And
Whoa.
while both London and Tokyo had a comparable increase in population, the change in house prices is,
Oh!
yeah. If we want to drastically reduce the level of poverty in our society, simply start treating homes as a commodity, like they used to be, instead of a treasure to be hoarded. Finland is the only country in Europe where the rate of homelessness is falling. In the capital of Helsinki, there is only need for one homeless shelter that beds 50 people.
Damn.
They don't need any more than that. And what they did was, they built enough affordable houses and then they put the homeless people in them. This saves the taxpayer 15,000
This is
euros
something I
per
think about a
year
lot.
for every
This is, I don't know if I want to get into this today because it's a really complicated part of my ideology, and what makes me disappointed about my ideology, I guess, or makes me sad that I don't have my libertarian card anymore. I got revoked by the 8 Values Political Compass test, is this. My definition of the purpose of government, which is to establish public goods while maintaining individual rights and enforcing them through the judiciary. Yeah, if the cost of homelessness to our society is greater than the cost of providing these houses for everyone, then maybe we should do it because it would cost our society less. Now, what do I mean by those costs? Like, first of all, you have the opportunity cost of a homeless person, right? So, like, on top of the cost of taking care of them, we have the cost of the fact that they could be a productive worker. Then you actually have the cost of taking care of a homeless person, which sucks. Like, being homeless sucks, and it's also super expensive for the state to take care of them because we have to provide all these things and we have to stop them from not dying. I feel like this is also a huge expense of the homeless community, and like, it's obviously not their fault. These are people who don't have access to homes, but these are people who get addicted to drugs, and they're people who they're hugely disproportionate victims of crime. And if it costs like $20,000 a year to stop like your average homeless person from dying and giving them food and all these things, and we could provide them a house for $15,000 a year and just for free at the cost of the state for $15,000 a year, and we get a productive worker out of it, we not only save $5,000 on the homeless person who doesn't cost society anymore, we profit in taxes. So maybe we should do this. Maybe, dog.
every homeless person that is given a home, because they no longer have to rely on social services. So next time you hand a homeless guy your spare change, bear in mind that you would get a tax cut if he was just given a free house. I did the maths with the current homeless population in the USA. It's $62 per taxpayer. I think we're done with this
Seems
section.
really low. Oh, okay. I guess it's that simple. We are keeping it pretty simple. What's the longest section of the video? Public health.
The iconic American suburb. The perfect place to settle down, start a family, go to church, play catch with Jimmy in the yard, beat your wife, see little Susie get married, she's growing up so fast, and eventually die of a heart attack while watering the lawn. But as charmingly vacuous as this is, there is no other way to live that is more damaging for the environment. Yes, indeed, it might sound backwards, but suburbs are worse for the environment than cities.
This is true.
Take a look at this map of the average household carbon footprint in each zip code. Here's New York City, and here are the suburbs surrounding it. That's a pretty stark contrast. We can find out why from California, which is literally just one giant suburb.
L.
If we consult this low-resolution JPEG chart of California's carbon footprint, two of the largest sources of their CO2 emissions are from transportation and electricity.
Yep.
It's no surprise that when everything is spaced out more in a suburb, you need to rely on a car to get around, as opposed to a city or just somewhere with more density where there is usually a store on your street that you can easily walk to. Also,
I love these. I live quite close to one, although I don't live on one. Although I live right next to a train station, and I have to cross like a highway to get there, but there is one of those dinky little shopping malls with grocery stores and some other amenities across from my apartment, but it's nowhere near as nice as these. But I actually do have one of these down the street at an apartment that's a pretty similar price to mine.
because houses in suburbs are generally bigger, they cost more to heat and to power, while utility pipes and electricity wires need to cover more distance to reach every house. Those sterile monocultural lawns don't provide much biodiversity either, and Las Vegas had to ban them entirely because watering equipment took up too much of the city's valuable
Jeez.
water supplies. Compare this with cities who have massive biodiverse central parks or smaller community gardens with many types of plants.
My girlfriend wants a clover lawn, by the way. That's her solution to this problem, is everybody gets clover lawns instead of the shitty grass that we all have now.
What has this got to do with house building?
Clovers take way less water, apparently, and she thinks they're prettier. I kind of like regular grass over clovers, but...
Simply put, if you build houses taller and put them closer together, you can fit more of them in the same amount of space.
Dude, just end the section there.
That means price go down, as well as CO2 emissions and wasted water. You don't have to drive as far to get places, and sharing a wall or two with your neighbours keeps the energy bills down. If you're a staunch suburbanite, you might be saying, "Ah, no, my idyllic bourgeois American lifestyle." I can't do the voice, I'm too tired. But it would be for your own good, because building houses like this might actually save your life one day.
Well, I mean, dude, we don't have to ban suburbs. We just have to stop aggressively subsidizing them, which I believe is really the current state of municipal government all over North America. We need to completely reset how we come at zoning. I have been thinking about this a lot. I'm not putting any municipal reforms, maybe a few, but I'm not putting any dramatic municipal reforms or coming at my political platform from a municipal angle. But they do the majority of zoning, which means that I'm really not going to get to touch it. I have no idea how to solve this problem. Everyone blames capitalism for the housing crisis, and it's the government who decides what buildings get built where. Now, I don't know how we fix this problem, but it's not entirely the market's fault, considering that they're not the ones allocating the buildings that get built. Oh, good. We're done. This is way too simple. I really liked his videos on the British Constitution. We should watch those later.
As the most densely populated non-microstate country in Europe, the Netherlands has to be conservative with their
I have a
space.
dog behind me, by the way.
Suburbs, in the Dutch sense, look less like this and more like this. Even in rural areas like farming communities, houses are still really close together, and most of them are huddled around the central village square,
Oh, that's
with
nice.
a few detached houses on the outskirts.
That's
Ignoring
nice.
the fact this looks far better than your soulless, cut-and-paste suburban tracts of boredom, it's also the reason why the Netherlands has one of Europe's lowest levels of obesity. For the same reason that if everything is in walking distance, people tend to walk more, which is better for their health. The narrow, winding streets also makes it a hassle to take cars on short journeys. You'd be better off taking your bike to work, which a lot of Dutch people actually do. Not only does this reduce carbon emissions and increase energy efficiency, like we discussed in the previous section, it obviously makes the air cleaner and makes the Netherlands one of the safest countries in the world for road traffic deaths. That's not to say the Dutch don't have a housing crisis too, but when they do build houses, they build them better than we do. In a study of 14,000 people living across the world, living in a dense suburb like those in the Netherlands cuts obesity by 9%. Mixed-use development, like putting shops and businesses near to houses, cut it by a further 8.3%.
Yeah, this solution isn't exactly as elegant as this guy's promising, is he?
And being within walking distance to a recreational area like parks, cut it by another 8.4%. Such a simple change with huge positive consequences, just because they built more houses closer together. Poor mental health among young people is increasingly a problem in the developed world too. A lot of people blame the Instasnaps and the tweetbooks, but you know what? I'm blaming the housing for that too.
Yeah,
Have you
you
ever tried
are.
to rent a place in London? No? Well, me neither, but look at these properties I found for rent online.
Ugh. Yeah, this isn't really a super great video. It really just says build more houses and it'll solve all these problems, which I guess is sort of true, but it's such a vast oversimplification. All these chapters need to be doubled in length, I would say, and then this video would be a lot more interesting.
How are you
And I really don't think you can say that about my first platform video. I don't want to toot my own horn or critique myself or anything, but first of all, I talk so brutally fast in that video. I really don't know. I think about what I would take out and what I would leave in. I don't know. This is a topic for another time. Let's not get stuck in critiquing this platform until it's actually finished.
Supposed to develop meaningful friendships if nobody can visit you? How are you supposed to exercise? How are you supposed to pay for hobbies and luxuries and the things that make life worth living if all of your income is going towards rent? God forbid the Sigma variant.
Also, yeah, try and keep under half of your income rent, man.
Along and forces people to lock down here. It's like solitary confinement. If we built more houses...
I felt really bad for New Yorkers and Londoners during the lockdowns, and I also was super annoyed at governments all over North America discouraging people to leave their population-dense homes and go to their second homes if they have access to second homes. I know most people don't, but became quite a kerfuffle in the Alberta, BC area because lots of people have cabins.
Construction companies would actually have to compete with each other to make the best possible homes instead of cramming people into these shoeboxes. One report by the Ministry of Health in 2012 recommended that no house in the UK be smaller than 79 square metres, because anything below this was found to be
850,
detrimental
850,
to the
sorry. I thought he
occupant's
meant
mental well-being.
779 square feet.
Despite this, the UK still has no national minimum floor space laws, only guidelines.
I think 850 square feet is bigger than my apartment, but I actually really like my apartment. I would say the bare minimum an apartment should have maybe is a bedroom and a half, kitchen, living room. Yeah, bedroom and a half, kitchen, living room. And it'd be nice to have access to like in-home washing, but I don't have that. Oh, and bathroom. Obviously bathroom with a bath. Whoops.
The average new dwelling built in Britain is a pitiful 74 square metres, the same in the Netherlands. Compare this with Denmark, where
I'm
the
gonna ask how big my apartment is.
average home is double this size. And I don't think the Danes are having a particularly tough time right now. Oh, did I say this report was published in 2012? No, it was actually published in 1912! Ah! As you may
Wait.
recall from
I think that's the current U.S. flag. Look at how the stars are not lined up. That's the 48. That's the 48 state flag, I think.
As you may recall from the start of the video, it is estimated that the American economy would be 74% larger if the housing crisis had never happened.
I would totally guess 20 to 30% larger. I would say I'm not even sure if the Great Depression never happened. If America's economy would be 74% larger than it was in 1929 by 1939. That is a pretty big. That's a pretty tall order. I would say maybe 30% or 20%, which is still a huge deal and still will provide validity to whatever argument this man is about to deploy. But 74%, that's nuts.
A second study partially confirmed this, saying that if 3 American cities, New York, San Jose, and San Francisco, allowed many more homes to be built, this would translate to a pay rise of between $8,700 and $16,000 for the average American, even if they don't live in those places. Cities are where wealth is generated these days, so it figures that when you lock people out of cities through high prices, you prevent them from being at their most productive. How many
You just send them to different cities. It's once again a little more complicated than that.
great computer innovations are we missing out on because the smartest programmer can't afford to live in Silicon Valley? How many Kino movies will never be made because Hollywood is too expensive for upstart directors and actors? What if we
Also,
never
you're making a much better argument for freedom of information than you are for free housing.
go to Mars because the person who knows how to do it can only afford to live in Clinton, Missouri,
Ouch!
and not with NASA in Pasadena? The same is true for any city or major economic centre across the world. New York, London, Berlin, Dublin, Auckland, Paris, Vancouver, Rome, Barcelona, Cape Town, Zurich. And for those that do manage to live in the cities, current housing costs usually negate their productive output anyway. For the average worker,
I live in Canada's most affordable city, by the way, Calgary. I really like Calgary. I think I should make actually a bunch of videos why it's awesome to live in Calgary. Maybe why you should try living here too.
most, if not all, of the wealth they add to the economy is sucked out by the real estate industry and put into the landlord's checking account. This is kneecapping your own
Oh, we're
economy.
not even halfway done with this video.
Build more houses, cut landlord profits, and these problems will just disappear.
Ooh, interesting. Lots of debunking myths.
Hong Kong has one of the lowest birth rates in the entire world, beating only South Korea and Puerto Rico. A birth rate
Oh, wait, I wanna
lower-
see that.
beating only South Korea
1.03, eh? 1.07. Jeez.
and Puerto Rico. A birth rate lower than 2 children per couple means that the population decreases. But the average Hong Kongese woman has only 1 child in her lifetime, which you can imagine could cause quite the problem a couple generations down the line. It is very normal for the fertility rate to drop when countries become developed, like in Bangladesh. The unintended consequence of this is that the national population begins to decrease, leaving a lot of old people and not a lot of young people to look after them
Aye.
and pay for their pensions. Not just in Hong Kong though. Across the developed world, countries are projected to lose millions in population over the next few decades for this reason. You
Gotta figure this out ASAP. You gotta figure this out ASAP. Although, I've seen no one ever talk about this. No one talks about how the decline in population might... I'm not sure how it will have an effect on human emissions, right? Because hypothetically, we will just keep increasing our productivity, which will in turn increase our emissions. But also, if less people just create less demand over time, then maybe emissions might go down. I'm not sure how much climate modeling takes into account population increase or decrease.
could supplement this with immigration, which is a perfectly fine solution, but it doesn't
That's what we do here, by the way.
address the root cause. Because when asked how many children do you really want, most women in
This
the
is
developed
important.
world
Listen.
answered 2 or 3,
Bingo.
above the replacement rate. So why don't they have that many children?
Lack of
You
access.
guessed it, it's the
Yeah.
houses. That's what this video is about, remember? The houses! In Hong Kong, the price of housing is astronomical. 1 square foot of floor space over there can cost $2,700 US, forcing many people to live in so-called coffin homes. It's a miracle they can afford to raise 1 child,
Brutal.
never mind 2. The situation is less extreme but still present in the Western world too. In the UK, for every 10% the rent increases, births
Hong Kong is a part of the Western world.
go down 5%. One study suggests that house price rises
whoa, let's
because
hear that
rents
again.
go down. In the UK, for every 10% the rent increases, births go down 5%. One study suggests that house price rises between 1996 and 2014 prevented the birth of 157,000 people. In 1976, nearly 40% of households in the USA were home to married couples with children. Today, that figure is 21%, with
Jeez.
single person or childless couples making up half of households. Not because people don't want a family, they just can't afford it. The more expensive it is to buy.
28% of people are alone. How many people are alone in that first chart? Yeah, it's completely inverted now. 7% more people are alone, but
couples making
there are
up
way less
half
people.
of households. Not
So there are way
because
less people in
don't want a
relationships,
family,
proportionally.
they just can't afford it. The more expensive it is to buy or rent an extra bedroom, the less likely a family is to get one and fill it with a child.
He's right, though, by the way. I'm not just saying because there's less people. Sorry, there's less people in relationships proportionally. He's wrong. He's totally right about all of this.
Okay,
I would say the primary reason the birth rate has declined is lack of access to affordable childcare to increase your size of your family.
behind schedule, so let's finish off with the lightning round.
Let's go!
Housing reduces crime. Increased home ownership generates significant reductions in property crime.
Increasing population density undeniably increases crime. I feel, isn't that 100% true? I feel like that's not even in dispute, but okay, dude.
And violent crime. When mortgage costs get too high and homes are foreclosed, the number of burglaries in the neighborhood of a foreclosed home goes up. Housing improves education. Children who live in a crowded household are much less likely to graduate from high school. Houses near high-performing schools cost on average 2.4 times as much.
I did know that. That might be a problem of attaching your school funding to property taxes. That might be a problem if you did that.
More houses lowers this entry barrier to good schools and gives parents more choice over their child's education. Housing promotes technological innovation. A study of 600,000 patents filed from 2000 to 2010 showed that areas with high-density housing produced more patents and innovations than low-density areas. And the housing crisis made coronavirus worse. You are obviously more likely to pass a disease on to your parents if you still live with them. Cities with high levels of overcrowding fared much worse than cities with plenty of housing for everyone.
I don't know what that, like I just said, I feel like population density also has a much higher chance of, like, he's totally right about the household thing, especially considering COVID is such a transmissible disease, but also feel like you're better off living in a more spread out area with your parents than you are living in a highly dense area by yourself. At least if one or more members of your household are working, which means they're still exposing themselves to the disease on a regular basis. All right, I'm ready for this one. I feel like this is going to be the dumbest take so far. Okay, none of these takes are necessarily dumb. Like I just said, I feel like they just need a little bit more time. Also, yeah, he's applying the solution too bluntly. And also, he's not actually saying how he wants to do it, but we're only halfway done.
So it's pretty clear that since the start of the 2010s that the Western world is having a bit of a moment, to say the least. And surprise, surprise, it can be traced back to housing. In Britain, people living in areas where house prices were stagnant were more likely to vote for populists and their policies, like Brexit, the SNP, Corbyn's Labour or Boris's Conservatives. In France, the same can be said for National Front voters. Sinn Féin saw a massive vote share increase in Ireland, driven by young people sick of Dublin's housing crisis. And Trump's voter base are Midwestern suburbanites who have seen their cities decimated after the Great Recession. Young people across the West can only afford poorly paid, insecure jobs that barely cover rent and living costs. The older generations sit comfortably in their overvalued housing and don't see why the young are so entitled and demanding of change. So as a reaction, they become reactionary.
There we go.
Populists all across the world have shown no respect for that barely cover rent and living costs. The older generations sit comfortably in their overvalued housing and don't see why the young are so entitled and demanding of change. So as a reaction, they become reactionary. Populists all across the world have shown no respect for good government or managing the economy properly. The housing crisis
just like the people that preceded them,
tearing our societies apart. It ruins the economy and stokes divisions, pushing people towards extremism. Extremism that plays into the hands of our enemies. There is
I'm
nothing.
I consider myself an anti-populist, but once again, yeah, that was a. Oh, we're done. We're done with security.
They want more than for the free
Wow. Okay.
countries of the world to withdraw
This
themselves
guy
inwards,
has 42 citations in his thing at least, and yeah, he only spends less than, I don't know, 3 minutes on each of these topics.
destroy their own economies, and descend into chaos.
This was definitely the worst argument so far, I'd say.
So I think it's fair to say that housing is pretty much the root of all of our issues in the world right now, and solving it by building more
Okay, poverty and homelessness are pretty much the same thing.
houses would greatly improve all of our lives. But how can we get developers to build more houses? What's stopping us
Sorry
from
for
doing
swaying.
this?
I
Well,
have
in
it
one
swaying.
part of the world, the answer can be found in a small town 100 years ago.
Hey, he's actually saying it, by the way. We're actually getting into his solution here, so maybe I shouldn't be so quick to judge this guy. Although maybe
It's
we
the
aren't.
1920s. Let's get in our car and drive to a party and listen to jazz on the radio and go to the movies. Meanwhile, the city of Cleveland is getting crazy big thanks to the growing industry,
What the
and
hell?
more and more people are moving to the surrounding suburbs. In the suburb of Euclid, northeast of Cleveland, the Ambler Realty Corporation wanted to build
I've heard of this city. I think I've heard of this story.
a set of apartments for all the new residents. But knowing the demographics of the growing worker population, the suburb of Euclid passed a law banning anything other than single-family detached homes, in an effort to keep prices high and keep out the working class undesirables.
Hey, were you guys here? I don't know. What was it, 20 minutes ago? Maybe 15 minutes ago when I said that the government choosing what gets built where might be a greater problem with the housing crisis than corporations? This kind of seems like strongly enhancing my argument.
Ambler Realty were quite annoyed at this. Not because it's racist, they just wanted to build some apartments. They took it all the way to the Supreme Court, arguing that it violated the 14th Amendment because the city had confiscated their property without compensation. The local government of Euclid argued, no it doesn't. And the Supreme Court agreed. The law was upheld. This gave inspiration to many cities across the United States and Canada who wanted to keep out black people and poor people through high prices. And so, across the United States, there are vast swathes of cities that legally cannot be anything other than single-house suburbs, including nearly all of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Damn, son.
Building these lovely townhouses is illegal, and if you want to turn a run-down factory into an apartment complex, then you are a criminal!
Damn.
No wonder housing is so expensive. Building cheap apartments is prohibited by the law. But did it work? Did Euclid at least get their all-white suburb? But not everywhere in the USA has these zoning laws. Houston, Texas did away with their zoning ordinances in the 1980s.
Looking fine, City of Houston. That's a pretty skyline.
As a result, you can
Let's
get
look at all the
this
green.
luxury apartment in downtown for $375 a week. I did some digging. Here's an apartment for the same price in Los Angeles.
Yuck.
Although this only explains the problem with housing in North America. Over in the UK, we have our own terrible planning laws too.
So the worst act?
Prior to the Second World War, if you owned a piece of land in Britain, you could do whatever you wanted with it. Build houses, demolish houses, make a park, construct a statue of your favourite racist, etc. In the 1930s, Britain was building
Perfection.
4 times as many houses as we do today, because if you wanted to, you could just build a house on
Yeah,
the land that
baby.
you own. This has its benefits. It was a factor in our recovery from the Great Depression and made up 17%.
How do you get the pipes, though? You know what I mean? Like, this is why you need zoning. How do you get the pipes and the electricity and the Wi-Fi? And how do you make sure that your neighbor house doesn't flood? And how do you make sure that all your places don't catch on fire? And that you can drive on the same type of road everywhere? And it's just, you need all these government regulations. But yeah, you should just be able to build what you want on your land. That's kind of the whole purpose of private property and land.
Percent of the country's economy at the time.
Damn.
It also has its drawbacks. Victorian London was hideously ugly. But in 1949, the Labour government introduced the Town and Country Planning Act, and now you
Classic labor.
need local government permission, as well as the permission of all the local residents, to do any of these things on your own land.
What, construct a new building, demolish a new building?
The local residents to do any of these things on your own
Change the purpose of a building, adding an extension. Nasty, nasty, nasty.
land. The act made it
Affect noise
unnecessarily
levels.
harder to build more houses,
Actually, that's not a bad one.
and as such, it set us on this path of economic and social decline. Clement Attlee, widely regarded as one of the best prime ministers in UK history, actually did more damage to the British economy than anything since the plague.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Clement Attlee either. Super ambitious social democratic policies, though. National Health Service.
Now-
What else we got under Clement Attlee? And I believe. Nah, I'm not gonna go off on Clement Attlee. I really don't know enough. We should talk more about Churchill someday.
Those are the main structural barriers in the US and Britain, and I'm sure other nations across the world have their own unnecessary laws and regulations, but we can't cover them all. But if there's one thing I'm sure all countries with housing crises have in common, it's
What is that country? What is that country? What is that country? Slovenia? No. 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 Oh, God damn it. Oh, I was right. It is Serbia. I put Montenegro and Kosovo where I thought Serbia was.
phrase, not in my backyard. A NIMBY is someone who opposes, tooth and nail, every potential construction of new housing in their area. This is the town they've lived in all their lives. Why should it have to change now? All these new residents will ruin the neighbourhood, take up too much space. Criminals could move here. Poor people could move here. Worst of all, it will lower the value of their home. Many of these fears are unfounded, as outlined in this video. But one thing that does come up a lot with NIMBYs is that they think it will ruin the neighbourhood character.
It's all old white people who have nothing better to do with their time than attend government meetings. Take note, Zoomers. What is up with us, by the way? We're like the most politically active generation in the world, and we are the least politically participated generation. So strange. We should be showing up at these city council meetings and crashing them and telling people that we need more affordable housing.
Many European capitals are filled with quaint, picturesque houses that would be ruined if you dumped a massive steel and glass apartment building next to them. Aside from the fact that a tent city of homeless people looks far worse than this building ever could, perhaps your time could be better spent arguing against ugly houses, not just houses in general. One proposal in the UK right now is to allow individual streets to democratically vote on which pre-approved design they want the new housing development to be. Housing gets built, local residents have no reason to oppose it, and the new builds are aesthetic. Ali pleasing. What's with Zoomers these days, using aesthetic as a synonym for beautiful? With these facts in mind, the solution seems simple enough. Remove barriers that prevent good housing from being built. Developers want to build homes and make money from them, but we're not letting them. It's time to repeal and replace these outdated, unhelpful laws.
Thank you, brother.
But these NIMBYs are smart. They have a whole host of excuses to justify their fear of change, even if the change is positive and benefits them.
Also, he didn't really say how he wanted to solve the housing crisis, did he?
Let's take a look at them in more detail. So next time you're at your next town planning committee meeting, if you're boring enough to do that, I mean, how sad can you get? You'll know exactly how to argue against the Karens and Kevins of the world. If you want to click off the video now, that's fine.
Let's go. Rent control's bad. Don't say it, man. Don't
Some
say it.
people out there might say that we have enough houses and it's just the greedy landlords and real estate sector that jack up prices. This isn't true, and we'll get onto that later, but the solution is not to put a limit on rent or house prices, otherwise known as rent controls.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
I will be the first to admit that for people who are
Oh,
renting,
by the way, I'm not a white supremacist. This is an okay sign, folks.
this policy can help. It protects them from landlords who arbitrarily hit them with rent increases. But that's the thing. It helps people who are currently renting, not future tenants. As evident in Berlin, where the amount of available housing dropped 30% and landlords instead started asking for other, more expensive ways to extract money from renters, like forcing them to buy their own furniture. In Stockholm, where after implementing rent control in 2011, the waiting list for an apartment is now 9 years, up from 5 years before the law was passed.
Yep.
In Boston, where rent control was found to benefit mostly wealthy white people. In St. Paul, where housing construction dropped 80% within the first 3 months of rent control being introduced. And in San Francisco, where a 2019 Stanford University report concluded,
Rent controls lowered the supply of rental housing in the city, but also shifted the city's housing supply towards less affordable types of housing that are likely to cater to the
You
tastes
needed
of
a
higher-income
report.
individuals.
You needed a report to tell you that like establishing the price of a good and not letting the market set it made it less efficiently distributed. Crazy, man. Crazy.
Ultimately, these shifts in housing supply seem likely to have driven up citywide rents, damaging housing affordability for future tenants. By
Crazy.
simultaneously bringing in higher income residents and preventing displacement of minorities, rent control has contributed to widening income inequality in the city.
I will summarize with a quote from Swedish economist Assar Lindbeck, who wrote in 1971 that,
It does not say economist.
Next to bombing, rent control seems in many cases to be the most efficient technique so far known for destroying cities.
Good old Osser knows how to put it down. I like this song.
the New Zealand political class love to blame rich Americans, the Chinese, and refugees as a reason why they need to cut
Brexit
immigration
refugees?
and ban foreigners from buying property in the country. This is strange because a government report in 2016 already discovered that, and I quote, because I couldn't find a Kiwi to voice this bit, visa-controlled immigration into New Zealand, and specifically Auckland, in the recent past has had a relatively small impact on house prices compared to other demand factors. You guys are lazy, just build.
Makes a lot of sense to me, by the way. I don't think your average immigrant has enough disposable cash to just buy a house when they show up. That's what is that minimum $15,000 for a 2.5% down payment on whatever. I don't know. I don't know what 2.5% of $750,000 is. That's a minimum first time home buyers thing. Down payment on your average home in Canada as of 2021, which was $750,000. By the way, I believe. So we'll get there one day, folks.
Build more houses.
Who's Kirsty
Thanks,
Alpha?
Kirsty. Great advice. Maybe I should have done what you did and buy my first house in 1993 with my parents' money for £51,000. Unfortunately, I made a terrible career choice of being born 7 years later, and now house prices have increased 440%. Oops. My bad.
This is a dumb argument. No one actually
There
says
are
this,
currently
right?
more empty houses in the UK or USA than there are homeless people in either of those countries. So just give them a house like Finland did. Sure, on paper, the number of empty houses is more than the number of people without homes, but it doesn't solve any of the other problems we have with not having enough houses to go around.
The population goes up, man. The population goes up over time. And what people need... Oh, God, I don't even need to get into this.
50% of American adults under 29 still live with their parents.
L.
That figure is 35% in the EU and 40% in Britain.
Oh, over half.
At least they're not homeless, but I'm certain most of them would want a place of their own that they can afford. The average
Most of my friends don't live with their parents anymore, I would say.
American commutes about an hour a day, adding up to 9 days total a year. Think of all the centuries of human life that is collectively wasted every day that would be massively reduced if people could live closer to where they work. And not only is our time wasted, our health is too. People with long commutes are 33% more likely to suffer from depression, 21% more likely to be obese,
Makes sense.
and nearly half of them get less than 7 hours of sleep each night. And just because someone has a home doesn't mean they aren't burdened by high rents or overcrowding. In New York City, 42% of renters pay more than a third of their income towards rent, with nearly 1 in 4 New Yorkers giving away more than half.
That's fucked up.
Aside
Don't do that unless you absolutely have to, man.
There is also
Oh,
the problem
over
that
half.
not all of these empty houses are fit for human habitation. This is an empty house, but so is this. Or what about the empty houses in the middle of nowhere with no job prospects or regional connections? On the opposite
You can
end
skip this section. There are enough houses.
the
It's
spectrum,
no
how many
chapters. There we go.
of
We're good.
rich people, though?
Ooh, 6 municipal flag.
Gentrification is a growing concern in working class communities, particularly in neighborhoods that are predominantly made up of ethnic minorities. Many people worry that building new housing will lead to predominantly middle-class white people moving in and raising the cost of living with their vapid middle-class faffery, pricing minorities out of their own communities. In 2021, the NYC Department of City Planning used census data between 2010 and 2020 to figure out the effects of new housing on the racial demographics of the city. They looked at population change on neighborhoods with low, average, and high levels of new housing construction. The demographic that increased the most was Asians. Hispanics also saw an increase no matter how many houses were built too. White residents get a less defined trend.
That's interesting.
Sometimes the white population goes up, sometimes nothing happens, and sometimes it goes down. However, in every single one of these scenarios, the black population decreased. It would appear that the more housing that gets
What
built,
year is this?
the higher percent of black people are forced to move out of the neighborhood. That's because when
It's strange that I believe Hispanic people are also more like I believe Asian people have a disproportionately higher income, but I believe Hispanic people have a disproportionately lower income. So you think that gentrification that affected the black community would also affect the Hispanic community, but evidently not, eh?
wealthy yuppies move into a city that doesn't have enough high-income housing for them, they move into working-class neighborhoods, taking up the cheap housing and raising the price for everyone else. So, what's the solution here? Well, there is actually
Excuse
a
me.
fourth section to this graph. Neighborhoods with very high levels of construction. And the effect on the demographics was...
Yay! Damn! Asian people!
It's certainly
What
not
the
an
hell?
even distribution by a long shot, but it's the only scenario where no racial group is excluded. Massively increasing the housing stock, massively
Red people were
increasing
Asian, right?
racial
Jesus!
inclusion. Despite the clear evidence against these
Oh, that was
policies
funny.
and objections, people still keep believing in them. Politicians simply don't want to have to confront angry NIMBY voters and so propose nice-sounding but ultimately worthless solutions to placate them. And this will come back to bite them eventually. As
Participate in your municipal governments, ladies and gentlemen. Cannot stress this enough.
we are about to find out from the place that decided to implement all of these terrible, terrible policies.
What is it? Alabama?
Mississippi.
Mississippi!
usually ranks among
Wait,
the worst in the United States.
that's
in
not the
terms of
Mississippi state flag. Let's take a look at the Mississippi state flag. Right? Isn't it? Isn't this the one? No. We're good. Oh, there it is. There it is. Isn't that it? Yeah, classic, classic. Way to go, Mississippi. This flew in the capital of the United States for decades. And it flew, well, I mean, it flew, it stood in the Capitol Rotunda during the January 6th during the January 6th, whatever you want to call it, all by itself. And if it's not Mississippi, it's one of the states. One of the states still has their official state flag with the stars and bars on it. Shame on you guys.
Education, poverty, public health, or crime. But there's one metric that Mississippi ranks the best in. They have the lowest rate of homelessness out of any state. This is because, despite their poverty and racism and so on, Mississippi goes the Finland route for solving the homeless problem. They build houses and they put people in them. Good job, Mississippi. Contrast this with the wealthy, liberal, high IQ California, with a homeless rate more than 11 times the rate of the supposedly backwards gun-toting redneck states. For whatever reason,
Hawaii.
California will do anything to reduce the homeless population, except build more houses.
How is Hawaii worse than, I'm looking at the stream chat, how is Hawaii worse than, the stream volume, how is Hawaii worse than Florida? And, Alaska?
As a result, their state just gets worse and worse.
Oh, so you'd think Alaska would have less homeless
Zoning
people
laws
because it's so
prevent
cold?
anyone from building houses more than 3 stories tall, and when new houses and buildings are proposed, the plans can be shot down by angry residents so long as they act angry enough. The population of San Francisco has basically stayed the same since 1960, but rents are through the roof, because every time a home is demolished or otherwise taken off the market, a new one can't be built to fill the gap. When California passed rent control measures in the 90s, it actually led to renters paying collectively $2.9 billion more than they had been paying before. New constructions and luxury houses were exempt from the rent control, so landlords simply converted existing housing into luxury houses, obtained the new building sticker, and proceeded to increase the rent while not actually adding any more houses to the total, and in fact taking away from the number of affordable houses.
Really seems like a government problem, once again, doesn't it? Am I crazy?
Sometimes it can take years just to get government permission to demolish old buildings and turn them into new homes or apartments. All the while, developers are paying property tax, hiring security, and paying for maintenance, inflating the price of the apartments when they finally do get built, so builders can make back their losses. The effect this has on Californian society is terrible. These mediocre houses sell for millions. People who have a salary of $140,000 per year still qualify for government assistance to pay their rent and mortgage. Do you want to visit the Walk of Fame? Too bad, it's a makeshift homeless shelter now.
Aw.
San Francisco
Jeez.
City Hall? Well, they turned it into an actual homeless shelter. Chinatown? Watch out for the heroin needles in your wonton soup. Here's a fun game. Put yourself on Google Street View anywhere in central LA and see how long it takes you to find a homeless tent. It's honestly scarier than Alien Isolation. Not only is this housing and homeless crisis a great humanitarian disaster, but it's also taking a hit on the Californian economy. A lot of the wealth generated by Silicon Valley is just vacuumed up by landlords due to high rents. The once thriving film industry is now relocating elsewhere, with the state of Georgia and the UK predicted to have more film studios than Hollywood by 2025.
Wow.
California is a warning bell for every other major city in the Western world. The fate of California will be the fate that befalls your town, your city, and your country if you don't solve the housing crisis.
Yeah, you didn't really present a lot of ways to solve the housing crisis in this video.
I don't care if you're a socialist or a liberal or a conservative or a libertarian or whatever this guy is. If you value the continued existence of free and democratic societies, if you want to fix the sorry state of the world right now, then support building more houses. That's it. That's all I have to say. Goodbye.
See you, brother.
Hello, thanks for sticking to the end. That was
I strongly support building new houses. It's super important that we need to do that, and we need to find better ways to do it. Though we need to solve this zoning issue rather than just bitch about capitalism.
fun, wasn't it? I promise I'll never make a video about anything this nerdy ever again.
No, that was it.
Special thanks to all of these.
Like I said, I don't think that was in depth enough. But let's see. Watch this fancy trick I can do. Oop, I think I did it. Did I do it? I did. Hello. Yeah, I was right. Yeah, my hard drive ran out of space when I was recording the VOD for this, so I won't be able to post this on YouTube unless I can download it. But anyway, I hope you had fun watching. Nobody did. We're just coming up on the hour mark, which means I think I did about 18 minutes of commentary for this 42-minute video, which is not bad. I do feel a little bit more confident trying to make a video about politics now. I think that we will maybe see some political commentary coming in the next 7 days on this channel. Well, on this Twitch channel and maybe on my YouTube channel, if I can free up some space on my hard drive. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have a good day, and I'll maybe see you later this evening for some Rome 2.